Okay, now we're going to be covering chapter 16. The first video here is lesson 16-1, the income statement. We're going to be learning how to prepare an income statement off of our worksheet. And some new things that we're going to be reviewing are preparing an income statement for a merchandising company and calculating component percentages. Now, the way of preparing the income statement is the same as it was for a service business. We just have a couple more categories. A couple of new areas we're going to be working on is the component percentage for cost of merchandise sold and a component percentage for gross profit on sales. Those are two things we did not have in our service business. So we're going to be covering that in this chapter. Now with this, in this chapter, one of our accounting concepts that we're going to be handling is the adequate disclosure. Now the financial statement should provide information about the business's financial condition, changes in the financial condition, and the progress of the operations. And the second concept we're going to be covering is consistent reporting. Now that is comparing financial condition and progress for more than one fiscal period also helps owners and managers make sound business decisions. Therefore, financial information must be reported in the same way from one fiscal period to the next. So you don't want to change how your balance sheet looks or how things are reported from year to year. That is the big concern with accounting, is we want consistent reporting. What we're doing with this business is we have a partner. There's two partners in this business. So we're going to have to divide the income and get that so that both partners get their share as they're supposed to be getting. So what we're handling in this chapter is the financial statements for a partnership. In section 16.1, we're going to be handling the income statement based off of the information we get on the worksheet. So as you see in front of you, we have a worksheet here that has all the accounts. We did the trial balance, and that equaled. We did the adjustments, and that equaled. And then we extended all the amounts over to the appropriate income statement or balance sheet columns. And then we ended up with a net income of $68,542, which transferred over to our owner's equity in our balance statement for the same amount. And then you notice that our balances here equal and these two balances equal. Okay, now there are 3 steps for creating the worksheet. 3 steps for creating the first part of the income statement, and then we got 5 more steps to create the rest of it. So there's a total of 8 steps in creating our worksheet. So it can be very complex. If you want to look over those steps, they're on page 373 and 374. The first thing we do is create the statement heading. So you'd put the name of the company up here, and it's an income statement we're doing. It's the name of the report, and then we put the period that it was for. This is for the year ended, for the month ended, for the quarter ended, whatever period we are doing, it is for the period ended and then the date. We're going to be doing for the year ended, so we would put for the year ended December 31st of the year. Then you go down below, and in the bottom here, not in this section right here, but in the next one down, you would center, or not center, but put to the left the revenue, and then you make the revenue section. Below that, we then have to create the cost of merchandise section, whichever amount of area it takes. And then below that, we then have the expenses section. So And then after we get all done with that, then we can figure out our net income based off of the sales, the gross profit, and then the expenses. And then after that's all done, then we can figure the component percentages based off of the sales in this column over here. So we're going to be doing all that here, and we'll be going off of the work together on page 396 in our book. Okay, so you might wonder where we're going to get all this information, because our book doesn't give us any information. Well, you are given the worksheet, which is shown right here. This was a worksheet that we did to calculate everything, and we just have to then transfer it all over to our income statement. Just be aware of where we get the different information as we plan it out. Okay, so the first thing is we've got what's called the title, and we have to put in the name of the company, A to Z Auto Parts. Okay, I'm going to make these a little bit bigger so we can see them better. And then this is for the year ended. And you can put for the year ended, or you can just put for year ended December 31st, and we'll do the current year. We could plan it on, say it was last year, so we could do December 14th. So we're doing last year's income statement. Okay, so that's the title. That's the first step in creating the income statement. The second step is to create the revenue section. So in the sixth line underneath the, just remember this is just a spacer for the heading, we put in revenue, and then we put in a quotate, or the colon. Okay, now we don't have any figures to put over in this area yet, because this is just the amount. So let's make all these numbers just a little bit bigger. I'm going to make them all 14 so they're a little easier to read. Okay, and we've only got one revenue, so who can tell me what that amount would be? No, I'm gonna just put it in there, and it's sales. Okay, so normally if you're doing it, you'd have it right there, and I had already indented it, so you can indent it once or twice. Probably just do it once is enough, using the indent button here. Okay, and our sales goes in the far right column. Since we only got one, we can put it in the far right column. Okay, now we've already got it formatted to be for numbers, but just to double check, I'll make sure they're all numbers. I'll put in a comma style. Okay, and then we can do the next part, which is the cost of goods sold. Okay, we got the heading for cost of goods sold put in there. Then we put a colon after it, and we go down to the next section. Now we're going to indent these, one indent each time, and then we can start typing. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to put in the beginning inventory of our merchandise. So we'd put in merchandise inventory, January 1st of the year we're doing it for. And we might wonder where we get that. We get that from our beginning inventory, which is in the trial balance sheet of our merchandise inventory account. So we got $228,820. Okay, that's our beginning inventory for merchandise. Now, excuse me. Now what we need to do is add in the purchases that we had for the current year. I'm going to indent that once. Purchases that we had for the year, and then we come up, put in this column, we put in the purchases, which is down in the bottom section of our income statement. We have purchases for $160,700. Okay. Now we have the amount that was available at the beginning of the year for here, and what was bought during the year. And then now what we want to have is the total cost of merchandise available for sale. Okay, and then what we do is we'll put a heavy line here, a thick bottom border, because we're adding these together. And what we'll do is we'll add the merchandise inventory from the beginning of the year to the purchases that were made during the year. So then we end up with a balance of $389,520. Now we have to take out the merchandise inventory that was counted up at the end of the year. So we'll indent that again, and we can make it less merchandise inventory January, excuse me, not January, it's December 31st, 2014. It's for the end of the year. It's the amount that was totaled up, the dollar value of it, and that amount we get from right here on our worksheet, from the balance sheet of our merchandise inventory at the end of the year, $215,420. Okay, so now we can put a thick border on the bottom of that one too. And then what we're going to do is then we end up with the cost of merchandise sold. And I'm going to indent that one spot. Okay. And then that amount we will put in the far column, because we're going to take our sales minus the cost of merchandise sold, because this is the cost of all the items that were listed in our sale that were sold. So we will have to take that amount in there. We'll take our available for sale cost and subtract our merchandise that's at the end of the year that we still have on inventory, and we end up getting $174,000, $174,100. So that's the amount of cost of merchandise that's the cost of merchandise that was sold up above. Okay. Now with this, I won't indent this. We have gross profit on sales. So what we have then is the difference between the two, because we want to see what we made above and beyond the cost of the merchandise. So what we'll do there is equal the sales minus our cost of merchandise sold to get our gross profit. Now that's the second grouping. We have our first grouping of revenue. So if we have more than one type of sales, we can list those up and below the revenue. And then we have our costs of merchandise sold to get our gross profit. And now in a third grouping, we're going to do our expenses. Okay. Here we will indent this too, and we go through and we list all of the expenses that were listed, advertising all the way down to our utilities expense. So we'll go ahead and add those all, put those in here. I'm going to demonstrate the first one, and then you can follow on after that. Advertising. If I can spell right now, expense. And then we'll put them all in this column, the amounts all in this column, so we can add them up and put the balance over here. So this one ends up being $5,580, and that's what you'll do with all of the expenses. So I'm going to pause right now, and you can pause the video till we get them all in. Okay, so now I've got all my expenses included and their corresponding amounts. Now I'm going to put a thick underline. I'm going to underline that one there because we're going to now total our expenses. And I want to indent that the same amount as the other ones. And we want to add them up in this column. We'll put our total expenses amount in this column. So I'm going to use the sum button here, and then I'm going to highlight the grouping that I want, and I get the amount here. The total expenses here. Now I'm going to put a heavy underline here, ruling there, because I'm going to put the same amount. I'm going to take this amount here, the gross profit on sales, subtract our total expenses to come up with our net income or net loss. Now we can see right now that we're going to have a net income because our gross profit on sales is larger than our expenses. So over here we'll put net income, and then I will equal that amount. I'll do equal this amount, the gross profit on sales, minus the total expenses to get this amount. Now you can prove this by looking at our worksheet. This amount should equal the amount that is listed in the net income in the income statement column and the debit side, 68,542. So if that is the same, we are good. So then we can just go across here, highlight both of them, and we can put in a heavy border there. I'm going to put in a real heavy border there. Actually, what you'd want to do is you want to double rule it, but since double rules don't show up real well, I'm going to highlight that also, so it just tells me that they're both done, that it is proven. Okay, now we've got one more thing to finish here. We got the component percentage of sales to list here. Now since we're doing it of sales, this amount is always 100%. Now we don't need to have the symbol in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this whole column. I'm going to get rid of the percentages, just so we don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have one decimal is what I want. So I will do 100 equals here. Okay, so this is 100%. Now what I need to do here now is I need to take this amount and divide it by this to get our percentage, our component percentage for cost of merchandise unsold. And you can take a calculator here and go to 174 100, divide it by 284 800, and I get 0.6113. Now, how do I list that as a percentage? I'll do it here also. Take this amount and divide it by this amount. Okay, so I get 0.16, and what we need to do then is take this number and then multiply it by 100, because we don't need to show the percentage because this is a percentage up here. So I need to make sure that that is all listed with just one decimal. So I'm going to make it one decimal. Oh, comma with one decimal. Okay, so there we go. 61. So then I need to do the component percentage for gross profit on sales. I can do it as 110 700 divided by 284 800, and I get 38.3. So if I'm going to do it in here, divide this amount, the 110 700, divide it by this amount, and then multiply that by 100, we get 38.9. If we look at our calculator here, if we were to round it, we go 38, 100 multiplied by 100 times 100, we get 38.86. Since it's 5 or above, we then rotate around our 8 to a 9. So and that will do that for us. So if we do it this way, now we got a couple more to do. We're going to take this one here and do the same thing. So we got 42 158 divided by 284 800, and it ends up being times 100, 14.8%. And let's see if we get the same thing here. This divided by this times 100, and we get 14.8. So that's good. The other way you could do it is to take the 41. Again, that wouldn't work. We'll do that here in a second. So now we're going to take the 68,542, divide that by the 284 800, and we get 24.1, because we'll want to round it. When you multiply this by 100, we're going to have to round it because that number right there should be rounded up to 1. So we'll do the same thing here. Equals this amount divided by our sales times 100, and we get 24.1. Okay, now the other way you can check it is take 38.9 subtract 14.8, and you get 24.1. So these two numbers here have to equal this number right here, where this number and this number should equal, well, they won't equal anything. It's because this is an absolutely different number, but this number and this number should equal that. This number plus this number should equal that. .1 plus 38.9 equals 63. So it doesn't quite. No, it shouldn't equal that. These two numbers equal 100, but then you got to go from here, subtract that to get that, which means these two would equal this number. So that is good. So, but anyway, we've already checked, proved this, so then we got our numbers here. Just make sure you're rounding to one decimal point in percentage. Okay? Okay. And that is the end of our section 1 for chapter 16. And we will be using this information in future sections, so just keep it together and remember where it is. I put everything on a spreadsheet here for you, but keep your worksheets together if you're doing it on paper. Thank you.